Cain, who became resentful and bitter because his sacrifices weren't accepted by God. It's a fundamental story of human beings, really. And so there's this envy that's driving us to misinterpret our institutions and to be careless with them. And the universities seem to be leading the pack.
I would say more than leading. Yeah, certainly. Yes, certainly leading, racing onwards. I think that one of the terrible ironies of this standpoint is that it becomes guilty of the very things that it accuses in others, and so it violates our institutional life. It violates our whole relation to the past. It violates the individual. That is to say, when you drink the Kool-Aid of there being only power all the way down, you are in a grim world. And what is, I think, so tragically perverse about the dismissal of our whole inherited past with all of its complexity and beauty and difficulty is that the tradition itself of all of humanistic learning has many of the very tools we need to confront the problems that those concerned with those who are concerned with the abuse of power are concerned about. And so and I think revolutions often work in this way, is that the first thing they need to do is alienate the entire record of the past from the present, because that's the basis upon which you bring in the brave new world, through your own manipulation of power and system and so on and so forth. So I think there are a number of things going on. It's always very tempting. I mean, the siren song of power is there's a kind of drug-like character to that. But I think, Jordan, we need to ask, why is it that these reductive, inadequate, manifestly ahistorical, irrational, utterly, low-grade kinds of analysis have become so dominant? And I think if we can't answer that question, it is difficult to transcend their hold on those who ascribe to them.
Well, you said that the woke phenomena is an index of the vast longing/hunger of our moment. I mean, the other thing, one of the other things that Rossi said that was quite interesting was that when the new doctrines entered the private school that he was teaching, he was initially highly supportive of them because they came in flying, let's say, the anti-racist flag. And who isn't happy about anti-racism? And so if you take it at face value, well, then you get to put yourself on the side of the heroes that are fighting against those who oppress people on the basis of arbitrary characteristics like their race. And so that certainly accounts for some of the attraction on the positive side. I mean, the negative side is, well, the opportunity to tear things down for the sake of tearing them down in the name of some higher moral virtue that just covers the real motivation, which is to tear things down because you're envious. But, to give the devil his due, well, there's something to be said for identifying with a movement that purports to be serving the interests of the poor and the dispossessed and those who are prejudiced against, and to take to task those who are perpetrators of such things. And so I see that as part of a religious impulse to do the good, but it's so incomplete, and it's so dangerous in its incompleteness because, well, partly because it provides a too convenient enemy, and partly because it does dispense with the richness of the past. And and then it brings with it in its wake, let's say, all sorts of ideas that are entirely counterproductive. It contains within it a fundamental critique of the idea of free market economies, for example, which to me is just a disaster. Just from a computational perspective, we can't do with central planning what the market can do with computation because it's distributed and it relies on the choices of everyone. It's a much more effective computational system, but we seem to have done a pretty bad job of defending it.
Well, I think that's a very, very good statement of the problem. Why is that so? I mean, it's it. Well, let's say a few things. The first is that I do think the whole woke thing, which, for whatever, I mean, it's for whatever, whether that, what that word even means is, I think it is a good question to dig into fairly carefully. But I think it is an index of a search for meaning in a deep sense, at least for many. Of course, there are many people who just cynically take things up. They know it's a power move. It's a power political move. They know what they're doing full well. It's wrong. It's reductive. It destroys people's lives. We know that's what's at work. There are always people who will do this. But in a much larger sense, I don't think that's an adequate analysis. I think that at a larger level, it is an index for a search for meaning. And we, I think, need to remember Aristotle's fundamental insight into the human psyche, which is that, one is only ever moved by some kind of a perceived good. That's why for Dante, you go down to the bottom of hell, which is just an allegory for him about this life, not a vision of the afterlife. Things are frozen. There's no movement at all, because the good of intellect, or even any perceived good, however limitedly or obscurely perceived, is gone. It's just frozen. And so whenever there's any action at all, it's because there's some kind of a perceived good at work, even if that is completely misperceived. I'm saying it's a perceived good. We never do anything at all. You don't go up to make yourself a sandwich or go get the mail or say hello to anyone without some kind of a perceived good. So the second thing I would say is that I think we need to think of times when there is a significant, therefore, we need to think about times when there is a significant amount of momentum behind something. It could be National Socialism in the 20s and 30s in Germany. It could be the movement to Scottish independence in our own day. It could be the so-called woke movement, Black Lives Matter, whatever lens we want to look at this from. We need to really honestly ask ourselves the question: what is moving in this? And I think it's clearly the case that from what I understand about the formation of the complicated historical movements that led to the Second World War, that there was in Germany, at least I would be very surprised to learn this is not the case, a vulnerability to an ideological standpoint that gave a defining collective purpose. And that seems to me to indicate a lack of that not being done in a better way. You could say the same thing, I suspect, about Scottish independence. Is it really that it's Scottish independence, or is it that?
Well, if you